Thank you very much, Petra, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a painful experience for us panelists to be between you and your weekend, but we'll try to be worthwhile. It's firstly a great thanks for the university for inviting us here today. For a diplomat who's always based in the capital of the country, we are not looking for excuses to leave the capital, but we're extremely happy when we can do it. So good to be out in the countryside, and I'm looking forward to enjoying the surrounding region over the weekend as well. Now, it's also a humbling experience for somebody who was last in the university payroll in the last century to talk to an audience of this magnitude and its expertise. And I must admit that even though I have, during my diplomatic career, worked with climate change issues, the last COP that I attended in a substantial role was COP number 11 in Montreal. Was anybody else there? No, that makes me feel very old. Good, but I will try to, during the next 15 minutes or so, to present some of Finland's, my country's policies and in countering climate change, and also our commitments and obligations in the context of climate goals and their impacts on health. And then I will take the liberty of express some thoughts also on finance and investments and artificial intelligence and digital twins, which were subject of the previous panel. Now, for Finland, there are several obligations and policy decisions under the European Union climate and energy legislation that are binding. Like all the EU member states, we are committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030, compared to the emissions levels in 1990. And our common aim is to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050 and carbon negative after that. We are also obliged to halve the effort sharing sectors, which means domestic transport, including aviation, buildings, agriculture, small industry, and waste, their emissions by 2030 and maintain the net sink of the land use sector. We should achieve the minimum net removal level for Finland's carbon sink by 2030. A key pillar of Finland's national climate policy is the National Climate Act, through which we have included Finland's global and EU obligations into national legislation. And I believe our National Climate Act was actually the first climate act which both sets national climate targets and creates the necessary legal framework for their planning and monitoring. The Act entered into force in 2015, and we started the journey to reach Finland's more ambitious targets and aims that go well beyond the Paris Agreement, net zero emissions by 2035, and followed by carbon negativity thereafter. Targets set in our Climate Act are based on a recommendation of the Finnish Climate Change Panel, which comprises of leading climate scientists in the country and experts on the field as well. Finland's Climate Act, you can say, is thus one of the first national climate acts to base its aims on the analysis of an independent scientific panel. The panel's recommendations are based on the ability to pay principle. That is to say that each person has a right to a per capita portion of the global carbon budget, dependent on the country's GDP per capita as it relates to the global average. This results in citizens in wealthier countries receiving a smaller portion of the global carbon budget per capita. We therefore acknowledge both climatology and global equity in determining our national targets. Ladies and gentlemen, Finland is in the northern fringe of Europe, and we are also a home to some 8,000 indigenous people, the Sami, who live in Lapland, in the northernmost part of my country. Therefore, in the Finnish way of thinking, it is of extremely high importance that national development goals take into special consideration vulnerable groups, communities, and ecosystems, such as the Sami. The traditional Sami culture is particularly vulnerable to climate change as it is linked to the rapidly warming Arctic, a region where the temperatures are rising faster than in any other area in the world. Our Climate Act states that the Sami people and culture must be taken into account in all climate policy planning, bringing the knowledge base and the perspectives of our indigenous people into the climate policy processes. The Act has also established the Sami Climate Council, whose 12 members represents different fields of science, including climatology and meteorology, ecology, study of indigenous peoples, and environmental economics, and, very importantly, holders of the traditional Sami knowledge about the environment and the land that they live in. Tasks of this council are to give opinions on climate policy plans and create a knowledge base in support of national climate policy preparation from the perspective of promoting and preserving the Sami culture. Dear friends, when it comes to climate change and health, Finland is one of the leading countries in both policy formation and scientific research. We were also one of the first countries to develop a national climate change adaptation plan for healthcare and social welfare sector already in the beginning of this millennium. The current climate change adaptation plan for 2021-2031 recognizes, among other things, the importance of a regional perspective in reducing inequality caused by climate change. Finland also emphasizes the importance of a human rights-based and inclusive approach in all climate work. In addition to the indigenous peoples that I mentioned, we highlight the position especially of women and girls and persons with disabilities. The Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare conducts research and expert work related to health and well-being issues affected by climate change, such as a sustainable and climate-friendly health and social sector, water safety, healthy buildings, resistance to weather disruptions, sustainable nutrition, as well as social and health effects of the heat waves. Here I must mention, sadly, that this summer 24 was the record warmest summer in my country since the 1930s. The population is enjoying it, but of course it is a symptom of a much more serious development. Then I will move to a couple of viewpoints on the earlier discussions for the Just Now conference. One of yesterday's panel highlighted the need to discuss with those who make finance and investment decisions. I would like to mention one example of governmental level cooperation on this, and that is the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action that was launched in April 2019 on Finland's initiative. The coalition currently has 84 member countries, accounting for about 66% of the world's GDP and about 40% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The coalition brings together fiscal and economic policymakers from around the world and aims to ensure fiscal and economic planning is part of the global response to climate change. Its core idea is quite simple: to involve the people holding the purse strings on the national level in mitigating climate change through taxation, budgeting, financing, and public procurement. The objectives of the coalition work set out in the 6 principles known as the Helsinki Principles are: 1, align policies and practices with the Paris Agreement; 2, share experience and expertise promoting collective understanding about climate change; work towards measures that result in effective carbon pricing; take climate change into account in macroeconomic policy, fiscal planning, budgeting, public investment management, and procurement practices; mobilize private sources of climate finance by facilitating investments and the developing of a financial sector which supports climate mitigation and adaptation; and finally, 6, engage actively in the domestic preparation and implementation of the NDCs. Dear friends, I also have another remark concerning the earlier panel discussions, and they address the question on how artificial intelligence and digital twins can be used to design environmental strategy. LUMI, spelled L-U-M-I, is one of the European Commission's Euro-HPC joint undertakings. It's a consortium of 11 countries, and LUMI is an acronym for Large Unified Modern Infrastructure. The acronym also happens to be the Finnish word for snow. Thus, it's a very suitable name for a supercomputer situated in Kajaani in the very north of Finland. LUMI offers world-class ecological sustainability, minimized environmental loading, and efficient energy consumption. It leads the way in achieving climate protection and green transition goals. Heat waste from cooling the computer is utilized by the city of Kajaani's district heating network. So all this makes LUMI one of the greenest supercomputers in the world. It is also the fastest supercomputer in Europe. And the LUMI collaboration.
One grass.
I guess I can continue. Yes, it enhances European and Finnish research, and it enables researchers to tackle computational problems on a significantly larger scale. For example, producing more accurate climate models and coupled models. LUMI is used in the EU's Destination Earth program and digital twins of the climate system. And the LUMI HPC is applying artificial intelligence to big data analysis, including atmospheric and environmental sciences and climate modeling. If there are any colleagues or scientists at the audience that want to learn more about it, my colleague Birgitta will be more than happy to introduce you more in depth to LUMI, given that she also happens to come from the city of Kajaani, where LUMI is located. Finally, and to conclude, I would like to highlight the central role of universities leading the way in the fight against climate change. Universities play a key role in education and research. They thus produce the expertise and develop solutions for mitigating and solving climate change. In 2020, the Finnish universities jointly published 12 theses containing recommendations for measures to be taken in all areas of operation, centered around sustainable development and the target of carbon neutrality, and in support of national climate and biodiversity goals. The theses are divided into 5 themes. First, sustainable and responsible research. Second, teaching and promoting sustainable development. Third, creating responsible and sustainable world through the university's own functions and administration. Fourth, driving change through societal impact and cooperation. And fifth, the universities are to operate more sustainably by focusing on the parties influencing, that is, funding them, and national evaluation models. Similarly, the universities of Applied Sciences in Finland approved a joint program for sustainable development and responsibility based on the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN accepted already in 2015. This program sets 14 commitments and outline measures towards these, including measures in education, return on investment management, and setting goals towards reaching carbon neutrality. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think this seminar today is an inspiring example of the commitment that the university sector is doing to lead the way in a just transition to net zero. And we have been certainly impressed by how well the University of Durham has taken on board the third theme of the Finnish recommendations, meaning creating a responsible and sustainable world through the university's own functions and administration, and I commend you for that. I wish to thank the organizers and the university for the invitation to share these ideas and my thoughts from Finland, and I look forward to a lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.